you want to break this off? It's 1, 2, 3, clap. It ties in the audio of the video.
Okay.
And then I go with the intro, and it's just free flowing like champagne.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
You want to break it off?
What do I do?
3, 2, 1, clap.
Okay.
And then we'll do it.
So I just say 3, 2, 1, then clap?
Yeah.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, clap.
Omaha! Welcome back to Defining Moments Podcast. My name is Wong Lam, and today's very special guest is Henry Roberts at Hank Wade. We'll get into why you named your handle Twitter at Hank Wade. Number one, thank you so much for your service. United States Air Force, correct?
Yep.
Retired firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
Volunteer firefighter.
Yep.
I'm wearing red. Veterans.
All right.
I appreciate you.
Yes, thank
we
you.
appreciate you. How are you doing today?
Good. I've been out touring the sights of Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
First time ever in Oklahoma, and it's pretty neat. A lot of stuff to see.
Yeah, it's really neat because we connected on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
and I started following you because I felt like your tweets are pretty quirky and really funny, and if you think about it, quite a bit of it is true that people don't say, but you tweet about it, and people are like, oh man, I'm so glad you tweet about it because that's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you come up with those tweets?
That a lot of it is driven by a tweet. I'll see someone tweet something, and it will usually trigger my mind to think of something.
Yeah.
And I see, like, not to pick on the women, but I'll see a lot of women say, why do all men do this? And maybe it's someone that's disgruntled. And it kind of made me thinking, like, well, there's always two sides to every coin. Yeah. So I always try to kind of fire back, like, well, why do all women do this? I try to get it to word it where it can engage someone's mind to think a little bit, like, why would you say that? Or what's behind it, kind of thing. And then the other times, it's just something funny to make people laugh, because social media is just so much negativity that it's nice to see something funny every now and then. And so
I agree. Before we get into social media and negativity, your stage name, if you don't mind pulling that handle towards me.
Okay.
There's a couple of gifts.
Ooh.
That shirt is yours.
Awesome.
You have to come on the show to get the shirt.
Yes.
So that's the...
Perfect. Oh, yeah. That'd be great.
That's all yours. And that is for your wife.
This is for my wife.
That's for your wife.
Perfect. I have mine. I have one just like this in the car, and used it today already.
Nice.
Yep. Oh, she might be getting a black one. I might be getting a purple one. But she doesn't know yet. So.
Oh, man.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate you taking your time to... Well, we broke it off with Omaha because you're from, or you reside in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yep, we live in, Omaha, Nebraska is a big city. We technically live in suburb of Bellevue.
Okay.
I mean, people know where Omaha is. Yeah. And it all runs together. You can't really tell the difference between one city and the other. Yeah. So I came out here 1994. I went in the Air Force and got stationed at Offutt Air Force Base and met my wife. And we actually got married. So I went in the Air Force January 18th in 1994. Wow. Her and I got married January 18th, 1997. It's my 3-year anniversary in the Air Force. Her and I got married. Man. And she was a local gal from town there. And so she already had a kid when we met. And then we had our next daughter, which would be my first child, while I was still in the Air Force. So I was getting out. We already had 2 kids. Omaha's a reasonable place to live. Yeah. I came from Northern California where it's very expensive. So to try to raise a family there would be just hard. So we stayed in Omaha, and her and I have been married 24 years now. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. How many kids?
6 kids.
6 kids.
4 girls and then 2 boys.
Wow. And your 4 girls are all out of high school?
Yep. So the youngest girl just graduated in the spring with, no, I guess I take that back. It'd be last summer. So she's been out. With the COVID thing, I got so mixed up because she was out of school back in March, and they were really supposed to go to June, but those kids had never gone back to school, and they kind of just did this close enough. You're graduating, you're done. So she never got to walk in a graduation or nothing like that. Yeah. So that was kind of a weird thing to go to. She never really got to go to prom because that got canceled. Yeah. So she's they're all the girls are out, and the boy have an 8th grader and a 3rd grader. And
man,
so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And you've been on many podcasts. I've heard a few of them, and you talk about mental health because you're a mental health advocate. You want to bring awareness to society, right? And then you also talked about agriculture, being an advocate for the agriculture community as well. Let's pick your brain, what led into the agricultural side?
So I had been around firefighting my entire life. My dad was a firefighter, and I started off in California in firefighting. We actually joined the fire department at the age of 16 out there. And there were certain things you couldn't do. You couldn't go inside a burning structure, couldn't drive the fire trucks, but you could do pretty much anything else. If it was a dead body, you were doing CPR on a dead body. And so I did that, and I was born and raised around the fire department, so it was always just something I talked about. That's who everyone knew I was related to the fire department, and got out to Offutt and joined the local Bellevue Volunteer Fire Department there, served there. And so in 2010, we went from all volunteer to a part-time paid program. So we were getting paid to staff the stations. And
nice.
2013 rolls around, and then I started having some weird aches and pains and having some difficulty breathing. So long story short, I get diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and asthma, so autoimmune disease. And so I can no longer do firefighting. It's too dangerous because you never could tell when you're going to have a flare-up. And I don't want to have another firefighter relying on me to pull him out of a fire, or the public. It's not safe for the public. I'm not supposed to be there. So I had to give it up. And it took me years to figure this out, but that was my identity. And losing that firefighter, being on the outside now, no longer being an active firefighter, I was lost. I didn't know what to do. So I spent a couple of years pretty depressed, pretty grumpy, just didn't know what to do. And so I have a little shed in my backyard. I started doing woodworking. I wanted to find something to focus my energy on. I had a regular job still, so I still had that. My bills were paid, but I needed some kind of hobby, some kind of passion. Started doing the woodworking, and while I was woodworking, I needed something to listen to. And I don't do like CNN, and I can't do the news stuff. I'm not a big sports guy, so I can't really listen to sports talk. And I stumbled across this rural radio network, and I kind of started getting interested in agriculture. And I knew a little bit about agriculture, but I really started finding out, learning about the science of why they use a certain herbicide or a pesticide, or how a plant even grows, or how do you raise cattle. So I kind of found the more I started learning about that, the less I started forgetting about the firefighter part, and kind of the more I became happy. And so I started learning about that. And then there's a gal out of Canada. Her name is Leslie Kelly, and she's a huge mental advocate up in Canada. And she has a show with a guy named Rob Sharkey. And so I was listening to them, and then Leslie Kelly was going to be on a show called the Ag State of Mind podcast. Had never heard of this Ag State of Mind guy. Some dude named Jason Meadows out of Missouri.
He's good.
Yeah. So I figured, well, if Leslie Kelly was good enough to be on his show, I've got to check it out, right? So I started listening to this podcast, and everything they talked about, I can relate. I've been in that situation, or I know that. And I started the more I learned, the better I started feeling. So I reached out to Jason and said, hey, your podcast is amazing. So he gave me some other ones. Go listen to this, go listen to that. So the most pivotal point was there was a guy named Jeff Ditzenberger. He's from, he lives up in, not Minnesota, but Wisconsin. And he has an organization called TUGS. And it's a mental health organization to help people. Jeff was on Jason's podcast. And there was just something about Jeff's story that really rang with me, kind of thing. Because at this point, I was no longer depressed, but I didn't feel like the old me. It was, but I kind of tossed around maybe this is what happens when you've had a mental health, bad mental health. Maybe there is no going back to the way it was. I didn't know. I had no idea. And at this time, I had no idea there was help out there to even get. I always thought help was just for you're ready to end your life. You call the suicide hotline, you get help. No one ever told me, if you're just feeling sad or depressed, go call someone, right? Yeah. So I'm trying to figure this out myself. So I reached out to Jeff's story. And I reached out to Jeff, and I started talking to him. Come to find out, we'd both been from California. He'd both been volunteer firefighters, both been in the military. Had all this stuff in common. So we just kind of hit it off. And so I kind of got to go back to when I was 17 years old. we got called down to a local laundromat, and it was a 6-year-old kid unresponsive in the back of a van. The weird thing about this kid was he only weighed 18 pounds. So the mom was a big, heavy drug user while she was pregnant with him. This kid should have never lived 6 years. So this kid was small enough. I scooped him up in my arms, and I'm doing CPR on him as we carry him over to the ambulance. And they haul him to the hospital. My brother was also a firefighter. He went with the ambulance to the hospital. I went back to the fire station. When they came back from the hospital, they said, hey, sheriff showed up, and they confiscated that body because there was burn marks on the chest. And they suspect that mom had been torturing this kid.
Oh, man.
Wow. Didn't really bother me too much, but at 17 years old, it's still kind of like, wow, it's a big slap in the face about reality and humanity. But as I got kids of my own and got older, that kid always just kind of was in the back of my mind. So come back to where I meet with Jeff, and I was talking to Jeff, and that night I was sitting there and I was kind of thinking about my conversation with Jeff, and this vision of this kid pops in my head, and he just says, thank you for caring for me, and it was gone. And it's kind of weird, like I wasn't on crack or wasn't on drugs or anything, but it was just this vision. But I felt this huge relief of like kind of this aha moment where in the fire service, you can't save everyone. Yeah. But that kid's spirit knew we tried, and it kind of just brought relief. So I thought for a couple of days, do I tell Jeff, what happened? Because I felt that me and him and our paths crossing somehow allowed this kid to find me, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Whatever, whether you believe in spirits or not, whatever. Yeah. And so I told Jeff, and I thought he's either going to, block me on social media, or he's going to understand it. So he goes, no, I totally understand and everything. So after kind of all of this, after meeting Jeff, I got back to where I was before 2013, when I was happy. And so then I started doing podcasts. I was on the Rob Starkey show, and Rob kind of gave me another aha moment where he said, you take my story and you take a farmer's story, and you just take the word firefighter out, take the word farmer, you can swap them. The stories are interchangeable. It's just different professions, right? Mm-hmm. And being that if I have one job, you have one job, we both can have mental health and feel the same feelings of not feeling like you're enough or your life is unimportant. So it's not what we do that makes the difference. It's how do we get this to fix so we don't feel that way. So I kind of learned from Jeff and Jason, hearing them tell their stories. I thought, if I can tell my story and someone can benefit from it and maybe not have to suffer as many years as I did, to realize there's help, or that it's okay, what you're feeling is normal. So, and it's a big jump to tell people so many personal things about yourself, because do you want to tell people you were, mentally ill? Because are they going to look at you like you're weak? Especially when you're a firefighter, you're supposed to be big, bad, and tough. Yeah. And I mean, I was a broken man. And so I was able to fix myself, and I want to help others that need help, that, and I think that's the biggest thing. And breaking down so the agricultural part is, through them, I learned about the mental health, and I still enjoy learning about the agriculture community and the mental health and trying to put the two together, because I do live in the city, and there's a huge gap between the agricultural world and the city people. So I kind of like to be that middle guy where, well, let me tell you why city people think this way, or I know how to go get the answers from the agriculture guy. So, to be the kind of the middleman that goes in between to help bring the two closer together. And so,
what do you think, in your mind, from your experience, what do you think is part of that gap from quote unquote city folks to the rural agricultural world?
There's two parts to it, I see. The one is, and I take my own life as an example. My grandpa always had horses. They raised animals for their own food. He lived in an apple orchard. So my dad growing up, in fact, my dad never got to play many sports in high school because they always were home working. My grandpa let them play one sport. My dad did basketball, but that was it. The rest of the time they were home. That's the reason my dad went in the Navy, because he went in the Navy as soon as he could, because he wanted to get out of there. He was like, I'm not going to spend my years doing this. So then when my dad had my brother and I, we lived, the part of California we were from was kind of rural, but still, I mean, we just had a house. We didn't have any animals and stuff on our farm or in our property. So now I have my own kids, and they are even further removed from the agricultural community because we live in the city. So they don't get to see where their meat comes from or where their stuff's grown. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is you do have the activists who are anti-meat, anti-farming. So they spread a lot of bad information. So you take a guy that lives in the city, you don't know whether that person is telling the truth or lying unless you actually go research it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where the agriculture community has the biggest problem, is getting the truth out to the city people. And then the city person has to decide, well, the farmer told me one thing, activist told me another thing, what's right or wrong, kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then the farmers, I also fire back at some of them because they often like to get on there and blast the city people, or city people, or they'll say a lot of things like city people are uneducated. And it really bothers me when they say that, because it's like, my asthma doctor, he grew up in a farm in Nebraska. I guarantee you that guy knows a lot about farming, but he wanted to go to be a doctor. He likes living in the city, so he's not uneducated about farming. He knows about farming. He grew up in the life. He just didn't want to follow that life.
Yeah.
So not all of us in the city are. The bad thing is the city people get the bad rep from the activists coming in that, So I try to let the farmers know not all of us are activists. And we may not know who grew our cow, but some of us know where that cow came from or how it was processed, kind of thing. So hopefully we can get people talking. And I learned we've got to do more talking with each other and not at each other.
No, that's true. The last few years, we started going locally to get our own cow butchered and processed. And this year we went with Parker, and we met him off of Twitter about a year or so ago and developed a friendship. And to me, it's a special bond. Right? It's deeper than just, oh, hey, let me go ahead and buy Larry from you. I understand the process. I talk to him actually at least once a week on the phone and through Twitter and through text messages. So I think it's great. And it's to your point, keeping the line of communication wide open and getting to know people. I see this stereotype with city folks being quote unquote uneducated to a certain extent of the agricultural world. It has a lot of it's just hard work getting after it, shooting straight from the hip, being open and honest. And a lot of city folks don't know how to take that.
Right.
Like, oh, well, that hurt my feelings or something like that. And so my parents are from Vietnam, so my aunt married a Marine that fought in the Vietnam War, and they live out in Piedmont, Oklahoma. So the agricultural world, I understand the waking up at 4 o'clock, feeding and chickens and baling hay and all that.
And that's another thing too, just simple things like when you are a farmer and you have livestock, you just can't take off for the weekend to go do something because someone's got to care for those animals.
Exactly.
And that's hard for the city people to be like, well, I work Monday through Friday. I mean, the weekend's off. We're going to go camping. Why don't you guys go with us? Like, well, it's not just that easy.
Right.
And so, trying to, and it's okay if the farmer lives that life and if the city person lives that life, because you get a lot of animosity between like, well, I can never live in the city. But then the city folks say, well, I can never live in the country. Yeah. And I like to say, hey, it's fine. You're more welcome to live in the city. You're welcome to live in the country.
Yeah.
It's what makes the world go around. It's, we try to celebrate diversity. And so, so that's the other thing I'm not afraid to speak up. Just like Mr. Parker, he'll let you know if you say something or rub him the wrong way. But, and I think there needs to be more of that because we're in a society where I'm too afraid to hurt your feelings. Right. So I don't want to correct you, but whatever. So
You use a phrase just a few minutes ago, celebrate diversity. What do you mean celebrate diversity?
Because I was raised where you judge a person by who they are, how they treat you. And growing up in Northern California, we were exposed to a lot of, the gay community, Hispanics. We had a lot of vineyards where I grew up. So we had a lot of people there that were working in the vineyards. And so, in the agricultural world, unfortunately, the agricultural world is predominantly white male, kind of thing. But I would like to see more people of color get into it, or even if two gay men want to go be farmers, I'd have no problem with that, because I'm thankful that they want to take the time and the hard work to raise an animal that I can feed my kids with, because I don't know that I could put that kind of dedication into farming. So I don't really care what religion you follow, what sexual preferences you have. If you treat me decent, I treat you decent, and we can be friends, or we can work together, and that's all that really matters. And we need much more of that, much more understanding of, like we were talking about your family and where they came from and what they went through. And nowadays it's so hard to even, I have a hard time, well, can I ask you those kind of questions? Am I going to offend you? Does that make me an instant racist because I asked you about where your culture is, your background? And I think that is driving a wedge between where we're no longer understanding or learning about why would your family come over here, kind of thing.
No, that's really interesting. And because there are certain quote unquote trainings that they talk about, oh, well, don't ask someone because you don't want them to think they're different, etc. But the reality is, I want more people to ask me about myself, where I came from. Why am I the way I am? Why is my mind like that? A lot of it's because of my upbringing. A lot of it's because of my parents' grit and determination to come to America to find freedom. But they didn't do it alone. They did it with the help of the United States military, men and women that sacrificed their lives, and are still continuing to do that. And that's thinking back about it and just understanding, just sitting there for a minute and just think, man, how appreciative can you be living in the greatest country in the world? Right, where your cell phone costs a lot more than someone's car in a third world country.
That cell phone can feed a family for a year in some places.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So gloves come off for me. Any topic is open. You may not like my answer. You may not like the way I describe my answer, but it's my answer because you asked. I'm going to give it to you the raw and authentic truth.
And that's what I enjoy about talking with people, though, is I want your answer because you lived the life. When I was in the firefighting world, the best training we ever got was the old guy that's been a firefighter for 20, 30 years. Especially guys from big cities where they've seen so much. And anytime we got training, for some guy took a class, read a book, and now he's teaching us that. And it's like when you get to the part of, okay, well, where would this, apply? How can this knot you're teaching me to tie? How can I use it? Well, I don't know. The book didn't tell me that, But the firefighter they've been doing for 30 years, well, let me tell you 5 times I've used this knot. And same thing with, I want to learn about your background from you because you've lived it. I don't want someone else tell me your background that thinks they know what you feel or what you should feel. So that's, we need to all listen a lot more, and we can learn. I think the more we learn about each other, the more we can understand and appreciate each other. And celebrate that diversity.
No, that's true. And because I hear the word or the phrase, let's celebrate diversity, and you said it, so it just triggered that thought. And it's almost like, I don't know if I need to be reminded to do that, because to your point, I was brought up to hang out with whomever is around me. And do I have to follow a certain path? No, I've got to be able to understand what path I want to based on the guidance I get from my role models, my parents. And surround yourself with really good friends. And then, of course, eliminating certain friends that were in your circle. So speaking of that leads to my next question. How do you deal with negativity in life and in social media? Because for some, social media is their real life.
I always, I've kind of one of those, I always try to find the silver lining in any situation. And I hate really focusing on negativity because it really does no good. On social media, if it's just one comment, I usually just try to ignore it and don't even really give it any, because the more attention you give it, the more it gives it weight. So I just either ignore them. Some people, you flat out have to block. They would just not give up on you. Block or move on. Sometimes I'll try to respond and, they'll say one thing and I'll say, well, And I don't get nasty and get back with them. I just kind of say, well, here's where I'm coming from. Why are you saying that? And maybe it's just a misunderstanding between, and that's the problem with social media. You type something, there's no inflection in it.
Right.
So how do you know what I said was realistic or sarcastic or, and people don't ever ask, well, where are you coming from? Why are you saying that? What's generating that?
Yeah.
And that's why I would try to figure out what's behind someone saying something. There's always, but so negative, I just try to reinforce it, or I hate to be the guy that's, well, could be worse, because you're not supposed to say it could be worse, but I do kind of a lot of times think of, hey, you could, how bad is your situation? Because we get so focused into it, but and then there's people's situations that are very bad, and can I help you? Is there something I can do to help you get out of it, or And when it comes to the mental health world, a lot of times just talking to someone, letting someone know you care is all the difference in the world. There's a friend of ours, he was telling a story. He's a farmer. His neighbor calls him up and says, hey, can you come over and help me with my animals? And the guy telling the story, he goes, I knew something's wrong, because the neighbor never calls, never needs help with his animals. There's another reason why. So he goes, I go over there and I help him out. At the end of it, I sat him down and I said, tell me what's really going on. And the guy just opens up. I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. And no one knew, because he had kept it locked in and didn't tell anyone. He was afraid to tell his wife. And so my friend encouraged him to, you need to call either a doctor or get some help or something, because this path you're on is going to be destructive. And they separated their ways. And the next morning, my friend got the phone call from that farmer. I'm going to go ahead and call, because you talked to me and encouraged me. You're right, I need to get some help. And the guy went and got some help. And that little conversation probably saved that guy's life, because had that not happened, it probably would have went the other way. And that's all it took. And that's the biggest thing. Mental health is such a stigma about, just like diversity. I'm not supposed to ask you about, where you came from. Well, I'm not supposed to ask you about, is things all right? Are you having, are you feeling okay? And that's a big problem. We need more of, are you all right? You might get mad at me. Hey, I'm just having a bad day. Just leave me alone. Okay, at least I know. At least you know that I cared enough to ask. And that's the difference. Or you might say, yeah, man, I don't know what to do. I want to end my life or something. And then, so it's just, that's all, everything's kind of just revolves around opening up and talking to people.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I might have told you this once, but maybe not. I've had asked two of my good friends on separate occasions if they felt suicidal based on the QBR training.
Yes.
And it's really interesting how, just to your point, again, just listening, having a conversation, and then more importantly, just genuinely ask, how are you doing? If they're having a bad day, they'll let you know. Most of the time, they'll just open up. It's like, man, this happened today. Juan was being a dick, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that was kind of what led me into advocating mental health in the agricultural world too, is I see a lot of people in the agricultural community that deal with mental health, and they always say a farmer wants to talk to a farmer. And I know there's all these studies and they've interviewed these farmers, but I don't necessarily really believe that, because when I was going through my situation, I didn't really want to talk to a firefighter, because the thing about mental health is it's hard to talk to loved ones. They would say, just tell a loved one. But when you feel worthless, the last thing you want to do is have someone you admire be let down or disappointed in you. If you were my physical brother, you and I will pretend we're brothers, and and I look up to you, you're my older brother, I want to come tell you that I'm, suffering up here. Because what if you're disappointed in me? Then that makes it even worse. But now if you and I are strangers, maybe we kind of know each other, we're co-workers, whatever, and you come up to me and say, are you feeling okay? I feel more comfortable talking to you, because if I let you down, oh well, right? I move on.
Yeah.
Not to sound so blunt, but for me, it was easier. And they say, a farmer will only understand a farmer. And I look at my own life when I relate what I went to through the firefighting world and the trauma that I had, and you look at a farmer, it may be different careers, but really you hurt the same, and the fix is going to be similar or getting help. So I don't really buy that a farmer can only talk to a farmer, because the problem in the agriculture and the rural communities, there's not much help out there. I'm fortunate I live in a big city, there's tons of help. But in the farming world, and everyone knows each other. So you've known the local doctor your whole life because he, probably helped your mom deliver you kind of thing, right? And took care of you all through grade school. And now you got to go tell this guy who everyone in town knows and you know him. And now I got to tell him I'm not feeling right. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of one thing I like to let people know. If you're a farmer and you're hurting, you don't have to stick in the farming community. You can go anywhere and get help. The key is just get the help. Yeah. And I was in the hospital a few weeks ago. I had to get my gallbladder out. And one of my nurses, she's a co-founder of a business where they do mental health. They have a collaboration of doctors, and they can even do online. You don't even have to live in Omaha to use their services. You can do it all through video chat, whatever. They can reach out anywhere to get help. But you just have to get the word out there that these organizations exist, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
One of the projects I've been thinking about wanting to do, when I was a kid, before 911 existed, everyone had a piece of paper next to the phone that had local sheriff's phone number, the fire department, poison control.
Yeah.
You knew what number, because in an emergency, you don't be thumbing around trying to find something, right? That's why 911 was so easy. Why don't we have something like that for mental health? A little magnet or something that people can put on the refrigerator or next to the phone, because it may not be you that's having a problem. It might be a loved one or a good friend. For sure. And hey, man, call this number. This is where you call to get help, kind of thing. And so that's one of the things I like to do is you have the help and you have the people who need the help. We got to get them connected. So
that's awesome, man. That's a great idea.
So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. Or I maybe down the road, I entertain with going to like farm trade shows and just handing out pamphlets, or something that a farmer can throw in the cab of his tractor, a little sticker that, because that's when farmers they're out in that tractor all day long, and that's when you start thinking and overthinking, and maybe they can look at that sticker and say, I need to call that, reach out and get some help or something.
Yeah. I could see where that would play a big role in just humans themselves. Whether you're on the tractor all day or you're firefighting in the firehouse waiting on the next call, like, oh man, what's that next call? That can take its toll. Or even for a spouse who has other spouse is a police officer. And they're wondering, man, I wonder if they're going to come home. So that's huge.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Even not just where the job is, look at how many women suffer from postmortem depression after the birth of a child.
That's a true big thing.
Yeah. So if I'm a firefighter or I'm a police officer and I'm working a lot of hours, and maybe I had to pick up some overtime shifts because the wife is out of work while she gave birth to this child, and we got bills to pay, and she's home suffering, maybe she doesn't want to tell me that, because she doesn't want me to look down on her.
Right.
Where does she go to get help? It's the biggest thing. We all know if I call you up and say, man, I've got a headache, you're probably going to tell me, well, have you tried taking some aspirin, some Tylenol, or if I call you up, I got this tooth that's just killing me. Well, have you talked to a dentist? We always know that kind of stuff. But if I call you up and I say, man, I don't feel good, I feel worthless, or I want to end my life, that's where people freeze up. We don't know. It doesn't just roll off the tongue. Have you called this person? Have you said that? So we got so much education, regardless of whether you live in the rural community or the city. We got a lot of education to educate these people and probably because mental health wasn't such a big problem years ago. It always has been. Maybe it's just coming to the surface more. But today's side, look at the last year with the whole virus and people being home, and a lot of marriages, people didn't realize, like, you love your wife, but you gotta live with her day in and day out. Boy, that's might be stressful.
Well, that's interesting. I saw a lot of that. Like, oh man, my wife is going to be at home all day. My husband, my kids are going to be home all day. I'm like, man, obviously I don't have any kids. I would just think that you make the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to go in and post it, because then when you post it, someone could take it as a negative thing. Like the way Wong Lam just took you. It's like, come on, man. It's not that bad. You married that person for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So let's role play. Man, Henry, I don't feel good, man. I feel like I'm worthless, and this might be my last day on earth.
So that's what I was probably asking, well, you want to tell me what's going on? Why do you feel this way? What did something happen to you, or
Yeah, my boss, she just said some things to me about my work and didn't give me a good answer, and I just don't feel like I do anything right.
Well, let me ask you this: do you feel like you want to end your life right now?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to call and get some help, talk to a doctor, or can I call with you? And there's a hotline we can call, and we can probably get you some help, because first off, what you're going through is not uncommon. A lot of people go through this. And it's okay that you feel this way, but we need to get you better. Would you be willing to kind of make that phone call with you, get you there?
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. That's good.
Or I can even ask, you got time? Let's go get let's just go have some dinner. Let's go have a cup of coffee, beer, whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll make the call there. I'll come pick you up, or.
That's the key. You go pick them up.
Yeah. I'll come pick you up, and we'll get this figured out.
Yeah.
I want you to promise me one thing, though. While I'm on the way to get you, I don't want you to do anything stupid, okay? Promise me you won't do anything stupid till I get there.
Yeah.
And then we'll get you fixed up. So.
Man, very good. You've been through that training.
Yeah.
So
QPR.
Tell our guests about the training.
So QPR is CPR is for your heart.
Right.
QPR is for your mind.
Right.
For question, persuade, and recommend.
Yep.
Or refer, rather.
Yeah.
And it teaches you just how to recognize someone that is mostly suicidal or definitely having a mental problem, and then teaches you kind of how to be aggressive and go after it, and ask you, do you feel like hurting yourself? And then kind of teaches you how to respond back, because it's a big shock when I'm expecting you to say no and you say yes. Like, whoa, now what do I do? And you need to, let's, can I make a phone call with you, or can I give you some phone numbers to call, or can I call the doctor? And if I feel like if we live in the same town or close, can we go, hang out for a little bit? Maybe you don't need a doctor. Maybe you just need someone to talk to. You don't know who to talk to. And maybe us going to getting a beer or a cup of coffee for an hour or two, maybe like, man, that's just what I need. I need to get that off my chest. And, maybe we go egg your boss's house.
That's funny. That's pretty funny. Man, do you ever get this is going to be a compliment, but I feel like this. Do you ever get the feel that people are like, man, dude, you're my dude. I just wish we could live closer here. We could hang out a little more often.
Yeah, because some of the really true friends I've made last year, my friend Quentin Keneally, he lives an hour north of me.
Yeah.
And he is great. He's a farmer.
Yeah.
And he just makes me, he's been the one that includes me in the agriculture conversations.
Yeah.
You'll get these group texts with just the farmers. He's the guy that always, hey, let's include this dumb city kid in here. He is great.
He seems like a good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Jason Meadows, that runs the Actually of Mine podcast. And we all text each other a couple of times a week, back and forth. I got the opportunity to meet Jason. He stopped by. He's coming through Nebraska, and he stopped at our house. And
that's cool.
I spent a couple hours with him. We're going to try to get down to see him in July, take my kids down. And then Jeff Ditzenberger, I actually went and saw him. He lives in Monroe, Wisconsin.
Wow.
And my wife and I, and I think my wife knew something was up, because kind of just hit this patch where when I was depressed before, I knew it was because I left the firefighting world. But then I had this batch where I just kind of got in a funk again. And I just was back in my old ways, but there really was no reason why. And my wife said, let's take a long weekend and go see Jeff. Let's just take off and go. So I called him up, and I said, are you going to be home? And he goes, yeah, I'll be around. And so we made a hotel reservation, and So I made him this big giant sign with his Tugs logo on it and a piece of wood, and epoxied it all up. And it was my wife helping me with the idea. She's the one that found this big logo, and we took it up and delivered it to him, and spent some time with him, had some dinner with him, and it's just so, those people, I talk to them pretty much daily, most daily to see one of them kind of thing. And they help keep me grounded. And there's been a few times where I felt a little off, and reach out to Jeff, and or Jeff would just confide in me. I've had time to talk to so many people this week, and it's been a bad week or whatever. So I definitely have. So I like to get out. That's why I came down here to Oklahoma City. So I had a couple plane tickets to use up, and I thought, where else can I go? So came down here, and just the more networking, we get to know people.
For sure.
So it's been some good friends. So
I definitely I appreciate the time that you. Last night you came over, we had dinner, hung out for 3-4 hours, and now you're sitting back here in the living room again and recording this podcast last minute. It's great.
It's been a good trip. It's fun to and I'm driving around today. And it's nice to get out of town, kind of refocus. Always balancing between work, and I work night shift, and so always trying to get my sleep in and running the kids around, and kind of get down here, and you kind of start figuring out what's really important in my life, what I really need to focus on, my health and my wife and my kids. And you kind of forget about all the other stuff. So it's been a good grounding experience.
Speaking of taking care of yourself, do you have any morning habits that you have to do?
I usually wake up, and the first thing I do is try to get out of bed. So I no, I mean, I get up because I usually get about 3 in the afternoon, and I'll get up and I'll kind of check, because everyone's busy during the day. So when I wake up at 3 in the afternoon, social media is just full of I gotta try to catch up all the comments on everything, and I follow Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So I'm trying to get all 3 and see what happened, what I missed during the day, kind of thing. So I do that, and then shower, and then get my day going, because that's when my wife works out of our house. And so what do I have for the day? Well, I got to go. This kid's got basketball. This one has horseback riding or something. And then at night at 10 o'clock, I start packing my lunch. I leave for work at 10:30 and get to work at 11 and work overnight. And so then my 2 nights off are Thursdays and Fridays, and that's usually when I do the woodworking projects. And I do that because I can go out in that shed. It's not in the house. If I have to make noise, standing wood or something, I can go out there. I got electricity and TV, and I can go out there and stay awake, because I sit at a computer for 40 hours a week. I don't want to just sit home on 2 nights off in the middle of the night watching TV. So
that's true.
So it gives me something to get out and go do, and a little heater out there in the wintertime. But but that's about it. That's my routine. So.
Earlier you talked about aha moments on your just listening to a podcast or being a part of a podcast or just meeting and talking to people off of Twitter. What are maybe 1 or 2 defining moments for you that you would like to share on this podcast?
Well, definitely probably the one I was talking about where Rob Sharkey said, you take my story and take a farmer's story and you pull the names out and you swap them and they're interchangeable. That was kind of the aha moment that, because up to that point, I thought what I was going through, I was 1 in a million. It was this rare thing. No one ever felt what I felt because no one ever talks about it. No one ever talks about their feelings. And listening to Rob and all these other podcasts that had guests on there talking about stories they've been through, trauma they've been through, you kind of get the big overview picture, and the little individual stories are different, but the big picture has always been the same, whether it be the mental trauma and how they fixed it. So that was kind of the big moment when I realized, okay, this is deeper than just me, or it's not just a firefighter problem. It affects, police officers. I mean, can you imagine half the stuff those guys see, what they go, oh man. And I had my own experience where we were overnight, we had a death. An 8-year-old died in a fire, and his grandma died in a fire. And you got to go home and then see your family and try to carry on with life. And, hey, Dad, you ready to go to my basketball game? And you're kind of still reeling from that night before, that very traumatic situation. And some survivor guilt because I walk in and there's my kids. I get to see my kids. That family's never going to see their kid again.
Right.
That weighs in your heart. So that was probably one of the biggest defining moments was when Rob said that kind of the interchangeable parts.
Yeah.
And then the last defining part was kind of going through the whole story of how it led me into Ag State of Mind, which led me to Jeff Ditzenberger, which kind of made me realize I want to tell my story like those guys were, because they helped me. Now it's my turn to help someone else. Mm-hmm. And the more of us we get helping each other, we keep building that circle bigger and bigger, we can spread the information easier. So that was, that's what I give credit to those guys. I mean, I told Jason and Jeff, it's really, I don't even know where I'd be today had it not been for them. I don't know that I would have ever taken my own life, because being a firefighter, I saw too many times what that did to the family.
Yeah, right.
And having my own kids, anytime I got leaning towards those kind of thoughts, I thought, man, I can't do that to my wife and my kids. I know my 8-year-old growing up, where's your dad? Well, he's dead, Right. So, but I knew I needed to be a better husband. And my wife actually never heard me talk about any of that till the Rob Sharkey podcast. When I was talking to Rob on the phone, my wife was in the other room. That's the first time I really ever said that I wasn't the best husband I could be. Or still pretty hard to get through sometimes, but it was a big moment for her. Defining moment that kind of brought us together. So it's still pretty tough, Yeah. I lost 3 or 4 years with my older kids that I can't get back, So, but anyways, so she knows now, and I think it was kind of she struggled with a lot of, she loved me, but I was a hard person to live with. And me announcing that publicly in a podcast kind of gave her that validation that it wasn't her problem, it was me, mm-hmm. And I was taking responsibility for fixing myself. And that was a big turning moment. I think my wife and I really grew closer after that kind of thing. So really helped. But it's hard to get through a lot of that. So
yeah. Do you ever think, because you talk about you quote unquote lost 3 or 4 years with daughters through that time period, and I'm just thinking, do you catch yourself trying to make up that time, or do you catch yourself making the moment of the times you have now?
The latter, where I can't get that time back, but right. I still have my 2 boys at home,
right?
And my girls are still young. None of them are married yet or nothing. So now I really try to seize the moment to make sure that I'm in the moment. Before we'd have the moment, but I wouldn't be in the moment. I'd just be there going through the motions. Yeah. And now I really try to make sure that I'm putting the focus on them and not about me. And I think that's, they always say, people will say things like, suicide is selfish or whatever kind of thing. And that's a mixed term back and forth. But when you kind of think about it, I was really being selfish because, I was a miserable person because I went through this traumatic thing and not being able to do the one passion I had. And my wife suffered for it. My kids suffered for it. And so that's when I got to fix myself I need to be who my wife needs me to be and the kids need to be. So now I just try to make it about them and try to do the best I can, because I'll never get back to the time with the older kids. So but at least I know I don't put the younger kids through that.
Yeah, that's great.
So
that's great. That brings me back to what you said way earlier in the podcast, is about the experience. You can't go through something unless you've been through something. Mm-hmm. And so you've been through something, you gained from the experience, and now you are the teacher because of the experience.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of one of the things that strike me a lot of times on social media is, whether they be a psychologist or they studied mental health, if that person's never been through an illness like that, it's kind of like a priest lecturing you on marriage. I'm like, the guy's never been married. And not to be derogative, but,
I know what you mean.
like living, my wife and I grew up in California, she grew up in Nebraska, and we're trying to make our lives one and different upbringings. And so you're supposed to go to the priest. Well, how do we resolve this problem? Well, he's never been in that situation. And it's the same thing with, whenever I give people advice, I just think of what I know from what I've experienced kind of thing. Because I can speak truthfully to that, because this is the experience. And maybe your experience would be different, or you learn something different. But just like I said, asking you where you came from, or, if I was to go talk to your parents, what was it like to come to the U.S., I'd rather hear it from them because they lived it. They can tell me the emotion. And maybe your parents say, man, it was the greatest thing ever. But maybe someone else that came to the U.S. said it was the worst thing ever. Yeah. Or was their only option. So you get different perspectives, but it's their perspective. This guy, when I was in the fire department, there was a guy, he said something to me that always stuck. He said, there's only one reality, and which is your reality. I have a perception of your reality. Right. And the guy next to me has a perception of your reality. All of us are just perceptions of your reality. There's only one reality. And same thing with my life. That always, tell me your reality, because I want to see if my perception of your reality was close or not, or whatever. And it doesn't really matter what my perception is, because it's your life, and so my job is, can I help your life, make your life better? Can we be good friends? Can I help you with something? Or No, that's great. It reminds me of reputation. You hear your reputation precedes you, etc. And so my thought is, okay, if you have a good reputation, I actually want to go hang out with you. I want to find out the real you. And over time, we're going to see about your reputation. Right. So do you feel like your quote unquote social media persona is different from your in-person persona? I guess it depends how people perceive, because I do give my wife a hard time, sarcastically, things about, like the other day, she had some dental work done. And so I made a tweet that, because she got home, she didn't feel like talking. Her mouth was sore from the work that they're going to keep it open so long. And she didn't feel like talking. So I kind of made the joke, like, that's the best $400 I ever spent. It's a nice quiet night, But reality was, I actually made her some food that she could eat, and took care of it. And I washed all the dishes, So on social media, I portrayed this like, I'm enjoying a nice quiet night. But I actually was very busy, because I had to feed the kids, feed her, and everything, which I enjoy doing. So it's part of my job. We work as a team, But so in regular life, I've always been pretty sarcastic, always the guy to make the joke or whatever. But yet I can break it down and be. In fact, we had. Years ago, there was one of our firefighters. He lived in the city, and he was having chest pains. So he was a younger guy. He wasn't old enough to be having like the heart attack yet, right? Kind of thing. Calls us, and we show up, and he made a comment. He goes, that's the most serious I've ever seen you be. Because when it's one of your brothers, you're very concerned, like, oh, this is bad. Let's get him to the hospital. And we were moving through the emotions, and he goes, every time I see you, you're always joking. Because I've never seen you so serious in my life. I said, well, it's because that was not the time to be joking. So that's kind of how I usually joke, but when I need to be serious, I can. Or just try to be caring. No, I can see that. I see that when I see your post, and then obviously I met you in person. I feel like you're the true dude. You're not fake. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I try kind of be Mr. Doug Parker, I tell you what I feel. Yeah. And if you like it, great. If not, But I try to be fair and try to understand where you're coming from. And because there's been a lot of times in my life where I've had a perception of something, and I found out that I thought the wrong way, Yeah. Especially, you see a lot, like my dad, one of the things what my dad told me when I was going off in the military, because he went off to the military, and then he ended up going back to where he grew up or was raised, kind of thing. But he got out and saw the world for 3 years, kind of thing. And, so many people in these small towns, they grew up there. They never leave there. So their perception of the rest of the world is what they know. Yeah. And it's so fascinating to get out, and even just in the United States alone, the East Coast versus West Coast versus the Midwest, the South, the Appalachians. I mean, everyone a little different kind of deal.
Yeah.
So that's great to learn. And then you start moving into other countries, and it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What do you think you would regret in the next 5 years if you don't do?
If I don't what?
If you don't do?
Do?
Yeah, just something you got a dream, you got a project. If you don't complete it in the next 5 years, you're going to regret it.
Well, my youngest boy, he's 8, and all my other kids are very athletic. This one is not. He got 2 left feet. That poor kid. But he's shown some interest in the agricultural community.
Good.
And he's 8 years old. So we're starting to get him involved now. He does some horseback riding. We're going to get him in the 4-H. We're going to raise a pig. And I like to keep him motivated going down that road and get him. So I would feel very disappointed if we didn't take advantage of this situation, especially now that I have all these agricultural friends. I got so many people I can reach out to and ask for help. So I really want to take advantage of that and make something of it and give this kid a fair shot at something.
That's awesome.
In sports. And then, the whole continuing to grow, maybe I could become a QPR instructor.
Yeah.
So maybe I could, that was another goal I had maybe down the road, would to go out in the rural communities and teach fire department and law enforcement QPR. Because now that I'm learning about the agricultural world, and I've been a firefighter, and I've been on the emergency side, and I can learn about the mental health, there's a big need to teach firefighters and cops 2 things. One, how to take care of themselves, but then how to deal with a farmer that's suffering a medical illness or a mental illness versus just, everyone knows how the farmer got his leg crushed in an auger. We know how to take care of that. But what about the farmer that's suffering mentally, or the other firefighter, or a law enforcement, because those guys see so much. And I feel it's a little harder in the rural communities, because in the firefighter, in the rural community, most of the time they can't even tell you an address, but if you say, hey, it's Farmer Johnson's house, they know right how to get there. Yeah. Versus I lived in the city, I didn't know most of the people I went to help. So unless it was your neighbor. But.
Right. I think that's awesome. I really feel like you should do that, head down that road. I feel like there's quote unquote too much lip service from the city agencies, state agencies that talk about it, but they're not necessarily being about it. Right. Actions. Yeah. And I think that'd be great. But I can say that about a lot of different agencies. A lot of talk to say the quote unquote right things, the politically correct things. Like, quit talking about it. Let's just go out there and get it done. One of the podcasts I was on was The Crazy Canuck. Yeah. And we brought that up in that conversation was, the trucking, all the big trucking organizations, they have that employee, where you can go as an employee and call and get help kind of thing. But there's still a stigma out there that if I call them, is my employer going to find out? Yeah. And they're not supposed to. It's supposed to be confidential, but you know how things work. And I said, that's why I think there needs to be an option out there where people can get help and not have to fear that getting back to their employer kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that would encourage people more often to reach out. I agree. It's like they have these HR departments. Well, if you reach out to HR, is there going to be backlash? They say no. How do I know? How can I trust that? Yeah. Because when I worked at a financial institution there in Omaha when I first got out of the military, and a big HR department. And that was supposed to be, the HR is kind of supposed to be that liaison between the boss and you. If there's something unresolvable, HR, but HR always leans towards the corporate side of they're going to stick up for the boss and protect the business. So it never really felt like they were there to help you. So it wasn't worth going to them and saying, look, I can't resolve this issue, because their option was usually, well, here's the ways you can resign. You can give us a letter or something, Yeah. And it really was about helping you out. So, it's definitely, and in the trucking world itself, these poor truckers, I don't know that I could be a trucker. Yeah. On the road by myself, even just me being down here without my wife for a couple of days, it's pretty rough. I'd rather her be here with me. It just didn't work out where she could come along. So next time in October, we want to make a trip down to
Like I said, I'll try to swoop through Tulsa and come down this way. I bring the boys with me.
Do it.
And then let her see this. And
yeah.
So we'll make her, well, no, she will eat egg rolls. She's a steak.
We can do steaks. Speaking of steaks, it's your shirt.
Yes.
Good life, great steaks. Is that true in Nebraska?
Yeah. So this was a fundraiser that they had. The money they raised from these T-shirts was going to go to the food bank.
Was that last year?
Yeah, last year.
Because I saw that shirt last year on Twitter.
Yeah, and so there was, I can't remember which organization did now, but it was with the Nebraska Beef Council and some other organizations, and then they raised a bunch of money. So it was a limited time deal, but yeah, I mean, they got good beef up there in Nebraska, but I think they got good beef everywhere, really.
Yeah. Well, tonight when you go out to park with Parker to Bandana Reds, they need to make a shirt that says Bandana Reds, the best ribeye.
Yeah, the best ribeye. Yeah. Knowing Parker, he'd probably make me get my own ribeye off his grass out there. You want a ribeye, you're going to get it yourself.
Oh, man. That's good. That's good.
So, yeah, that's where the goals are. So I just got to get myself motivated and put the work in. And any person you ever see that's done that, you got to put the work in. We want to put the hours in. So.
Yeah, 100% right.
But I have, my job is, I'm very fortunate where we only work 40 hours. We're contracted to the military, so we are not authorized to do overtime. So we work around the clock. So I don't have to stay late because there's another shift coming on to relieve me. So I have a great job. I have 40 hours a week. I don't have to work much overtime. I don't have to travel. So I really do have a lot of spare time I can invest into something more than just reading social media. And the boys will be getting older and, they start doing their own thing and they start driving. They don't need you as much. So, although my wife can put me to work, I got home Monday morning at 7:00, and by the first 2 hours, I already had taken a bed apart, moved it outside, assembled a baby crib, and I mean, she had a list. She was just
baby crib for her job.
Yeah, for her daycare.
Okay.
Pretty sad story. She got there was a baby. We had to bring a baby into the daycare. Dad's in the Marine Corps. He's overseas. Mom was in a bad car wreck. Probably not going to make it. And so the grandparents, friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing, we need to put this kid in daycare because we all work, but we don't know what to do. And we're trying to figure out what's going on. So my wife says, I've got room, and it's just this cutest little baby.
Wow.
And so it's been actually hard on my wife because her and I kind of takes our breath away a little bit. Like, that could be any of us in a car wreck to get, I can't imagine if I had to explain to my 8-year-old boy that his mom was gone or something. I don't even begin to think about what that kind of mess would be like. So,
man. But
my wife is happy to help out because she's got the biggest heart. I give her a hard time, but boy, that girl, if it wasn't, my kids are very fortunate to have the mom they did, because if I was in charge, they wouldn't get nothing.
My next question I'm going to ask, and we can cut this out if you want, your answer or even my question. So social media, a lot of negativity. We obviously see politically, racially, etc. I feel like there's a lot of mentally weak, not mentally strong. And it's not mental illness. I'm just talking about just being mentally strong. I feel like there's maybe people tweet about their daily lives all the time, feeling bad about themselves, feeling sorry for themselves, a pity party. And to me, it's like, I don't know if it's an attention getter or is that how you really feel? Do you feel like on social media, the self-pity party, how does that translate to your real world experience when you work in your environment? Are there the same type of mentalities?
Yeah, I find that usually the person on, say Twitter, take Twitter because that's usually what I spend most time on.
Sure.
The person that's constantly complaining about an ex-boyfriend, especially if they were cheated on or something very traumatic to them, that I find a lot of times it's more like a cry for help, really, or they're needing some kind of self-reassurance because there's usually a deeper issue. Yeah. And I've learned about listening to a lot of these mental health podcasts. It's always, you think this, But really, it's this here. And I got a good analogy, a golf analogy I'll come back to in a minute. Remind me about that. But so a lot of times, maybe a man cheated on a woman and she's complaining about it nonstop, very negative. But it's not maybe so much that the man cheated on her, it's that does she feel like he cheated because of her? Like she was not enough for him?
Yeah.
Kind of that, why did this whole thing happen? And that's when those people, that's kind of like my situation where she's not suicidal, but she probably could stand to get some help, talk to a counselor, and go through and say, look, what happened to you was not your fault. This was just him, it was a situation, whatever. But I think a lot of them are reaching out for kind of that reassurance that, you are good enough. And that's why a lot of times I see in the mental health world too, is that people don't feel they're good enough. My life just doesn't matter. No one cares. But it does matter. At the end of the day, someone somewhere is going to care. If I went out and took my life right now, my wife and kids and everything.
Yeah, for sure.
My mom and dad are still alive. So when you're in that dark, that's why they call it darkness, because it feels like you're in this dark tunnel with no light. And, it's hard to see out that, but there are people, looking for you and love you and care about you. Maybe they don't talk to you every day, but, there's going to be people that care about you.
Yeah.
And that goes back to, a lot of times I tweet little things about, it takes literally 10 seconds to just text, hey, are you okay today? Maybe I haven't, especially if I know you post every day on social media, and also I don't see nothing from you 3 or 4 days, I try to pay attention to that because I want to reach out. Are you okay? Maybe you're just on vacation and you have no cell phone service, or you're just really busy, or maybe you are in the hospital or something. But and a lot of I do it to my friends. No, hey, I'm fine. It's just my kid broke his leg, and we've been busy with that. Because not everyone always puts everything on social media. You find out these things like your kid's in the hospital, you didn't say nothing. Like, well, just didn't feel like they need to be on social media.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but then I know, okay, he's fine. Good, whatever. So, I feel a lot of people it's usually some kind of cry for help, and it's hard because on social media, I might follow a handful of people, but I don't know them enough to where, do I butt in? Do I say, hey, have you thought about, because if you are single and you're looking for a man and all you're doing is complain about your old man, do you want to get involved in that mess kind of thing?
Right.
So how can you get that person to turn around and become more positive and help in there? And that's each person's different. So, but
that's interesting. I ask is because I post, and sometimes I'll get a one-off or a couple people like, man, that wasn't positive, and you're supposed to be this quote-unquote positive guy all the time. And my response is, my positivity is not about rainbows and unicorns. It's about, hey, let's get up and let's get after it today.
Yeah. And that's another thing I struggle with is I like to tweet about the mental health world, like, hey, don't forget to call your friend today, or,
for sure.
Hey, remember that you are someone, or it's okay to feel this. But then I also like to throw in jokes like make fun of my wife or something funny. But because I feel when I've gotten advice from someone that I know is a real person, some of these people, they have a professionalism on social media. Everything is always professional. It feels like a robot regenerating tweet after tweet.
Yeah.
Whereas I want people to know that I am a real person. I had a bad day and maybe I complained about a political thing, or I made fun of my wife, or maybe I'm just feeling joyous and I want to share my joy and let people know their life matters or something. So I try to mix it up so it's not just the same. Yeah. Because I think after a while, if you do the same thing time and time again, people just kind of start to annoy you or ignore you because, the golf thing I was bringing up.
Yeah.
Heard a story one time. And I don't know if someone made it up or whatever, but anyways, guy goes to golf pro, and I don't even play golf, but he says, hey, can you teach me how to putt? I'm horrible at putting. I can't ever get the ball in the hole. And the golf pro says, well, how are you at chipping? Well, I'm pretty good at chipping. He goes, let's improve your chipping game. Because you can chip that ball closer to the hole. You don't have to be a good putter to get it in there. So it's kind of like that guy was so focused on my problem is putting. I know how to putt. Well, let's look at the bigger picture. What are you better at? Better at this. If you can make this better, you don't need that because you get the ball closer to the hole. Same thing with life. The same with mental health. Like, okay, you're telling me this, but what's the deep root cause of what's bothering you?
Yeah.
And if you fix that, when we go into firefighting, they teach us you want to get to the seat of the fire. If the fire's in the corner over there, you want to get the water where the fire is. Spraying the water on the other side of the room,
right,
doesn't do anything, right?
Yep.
Same thing.
Yeah.
You got to get to the root and you extinguish it, and all the rest will fall in play. So
I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I've just heard that years and years ago, and I've always just kind of, let's look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
If you can't.
Still stands true. Yeah.
And it also applies in firefighting. If you are trying to advance on a fire and it's dark and things are falling down, we can't get their way. Okay, let's back up. Can we go a different route? Can we go through a different window, through a different door? Mm-hmm. What are our options? Yeah. Always trying to reevaluate. Yeah. And I do that with my regular life. Like I'm a big to-do list guy kind of thing. But I like to sit down, and it drives my wife crazy because my wife's a live in the moment kind of thing. Yeah. And I like to plan out, what are our goals this year? Where do we want to go? Who do we want to see? What do we need to buy? Right. And let's work those goals. And then halfway through the year, okay, where are we at so far? So I'm always reevaluating, I just try to live in the moment. Yeah. I don't always want to be focused on that far goal, but kind of working towards getting there. So
I like that.
And when it comes to mental health, if you went through a traumatic situation, you're not going to feel instantly better overnight. You go talk to a counselor once, it's not going to be, I'm fixed. Yeah. But keep that going. My goal was to get back to where I was when I was a firefighter, that happiness. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of plateaued up and then just worked up there and I got there eventually. Right. I didn't know if it was possible, but it was. So.
Yeah. That's great.
But
what are 2 questions you wish people would ask you, but no one ever does?
Probably 2 questions. Oh man, that's tough. I get asked a lot of questions, so I guess just more, people like, how can they be involved with mental health? Because not everyone has to be a mental health advocate. Right. I look at when they always teach you CPR because maybe the guy next to you drops dead at the grocery store. CPR, you can save that guy's life. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean you go out preaching CPR to everyone, right? Right. Same thing with QPR. If we could train more people about the signs and awarenesses of mental health and just make people aware, you don't have to be an expert or an advocate or speech to people, but just know more, spread the knowledge. So I guess that's one of the things. People would ask more, how can we get involved, or what can we do, what we can learn, and then the other question, I guess, would be just more probably towards the agricultural community. Especially for people in the city, well, on both sides of the aisle, people in the city can ask, what can we do to learn about, or what are some misconceptions that we hear all the time? And I can help either, well, this is what I've learned, or this is what you can go look at kind of thing. But the same for the agricultural community. Come to me and say, why do you like living in the city? Or why do you people feel this way? And I can tell them a lot of the misconceptions that, we have about them and they have about us, because I see both sides of it. Mm-hmm. So, I wish people would ask more about how can they advance themselves to be better alert for the medical or mental illness, and let's all work together to close that gap between the agriculture community and the city folks. So.
Okay, so let's take this just one answer on each side of the aisle. What's a misconception about the city folks and a misconception about the agricultural world? And then why do you like living in the city?
So one of the misconceptions, the biggest problem is a lot of city folk think that the farmers are destroying the land or abuse their animals. And which, when you learn, that's, first off, a farmer has no use in destroying his land, because that's what makes him his money, or her money, whoever, so they need to take care of that and make sure it can produce every year for them. Same thing with the animals. they're not going to abuse the animals because they're relying on that animal being a certain weight and being healthy and looking good to get premium price for it. And take something in there ragged that you didn't feed, you're not going to get any money for it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one misconception, is letting people know that the farmers do really care about the land and the animals. And the other side coming back is that it's okay that us city folk don't really know so much about who grew our food, but there are a lot of us that do. My wife and kids are a prime example. They're thankful there's food to eat. Mm-hmm. Now, they may not understand the process that it took to get it from all the way from the growing it to the store, but it doesn't mean that they hate the farmers. They respect the farmers. They are thankful for it. They don't go talking about it like I do. My kids are always like, can't you just buy your food at the store and leave the farmers alone? You know, they're busy, Dad. You have to keep bothering the farmers all the time. But just because we don't know where our food comes from, it doesn't mean we I guess it's not just, we're not trying to disrespect the farmers. Yeah. You know, it's no different than, I mean, I don't go ask the dentist what he had to go through to become a dentist. I just want him to fix my tooth. Kind of. Yeah. You know, I don't disrespect him. I'm thankful he's there, but I don't focus on what he had to go, what his schooling was like, you know. Yeah. So, and then what was the last question?
Why do you live in the city?
Oh, why I live in the city? Well, I live in the city mainly because my job is there. You know, I work on base, and my wife and I would like to, once the boys are growing up, we've talked about getting out maybe a little more rural area where we could have a few animals of our own, maybe raise our own cow, our own pig or sheep or something like that, get a little out of the city. But at the same time, I kind of spoiled. I like being close. The grocery store's down the street. Yeah. When I went to, you know, I spent 5 days in critical care in the hospital. The ambulance was it was a 10-minute drive up to the hospital. Yeah. I was there, and I mean, and Omaha has, and whether it's cancer or whatever, there's a lot of good medical facilities. We got a couple of trauma units in town. So part of me, unfortunately, just scares me living an hour away from the nearest doctor or whatever. Yeah. I don't know that that's something I want to do. There's people that do great, but it's not for you. Yeah, it's not for me. I like being near those kind of resources, you know.
And that's okay. And that's awesome that you're an advocate for the agricultural community too, to help bridge a quote unquote gap, if you will. What's interesting about the first misconception about city folks and the farmers and the land and the animals, you see a lot of this now in Oklahoma City. They're trying to build neighborhoods out in the rural areas, and they put gated communities up in these rural areas. And so to me, it's questioning the agriculture community about what they're doing and with their lands. The city folks are actually infiltrating and putting these quote unquote borders around because you got this gate, you got these big fancy homes, and like you're doing it to yourself, man.
And we've all heard the stories of you build these big fancy homes right next to a farmer's field. Yeah. And then you're calling the city council complaining because the farmer's running his tractor at 4 a.m. Yeah. Well, that farmer's been there. Yeah. His family's had that property for 100 years.
Exactly.
You built next to him.
Yeah, that's on you.
Yeah. You should have thought about that before you built the house. Like, I bet that farmer be running his tractor. Yeah. No, I'll just build here and then complain about it, you know, or the smell. Well, I don't like the smell of the hogs. Like, well, then you shouldn't have, you know. And we ran into this in the firefighting world anytime a city wants to build like a fire training tower. Oh, no, we don't want that in our backyard. All the smoke and everything. Well, the smoke we use, you can breathe, the training smoke, you can breathe that without a mask. It's it's not actual smoke. It's no harmful chemicals in there. We do it all the time. We go in there because the training is, something happens and you rip your mask off in the fake smoke. You're not going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just there to give the illusion of looking, you're not going to see anything. So, but there's some misconception. We're going to smell all these smells and everything. No, you won't. We usually have to educate the public. We're going to put this training facility here. These are the type of smokes we have. This is where we're going to be training. These are the hours that we're training. We try to do this to keep the noise down, you know. Yeah. Oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't so bad after all. Yeah. And then teach them the positive. Hey, positive, there's a big training center behind your house means no one's building a house right behind you.
That's true.
Or not putting a super Walmart in there or something, and now you're going to have 1,000 more cars a day in here. Yeah. Then they kind of think, oh yeah, what do you have? Fire trucks once a week or 1,000 cars a day.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting because we can go off on another tangent another topic about humans. I feel like most humans are born to be competitive. And then unfortunately, on the other side of that too, certain competition can lead to selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of what I see around is I just care about myself. I just care about my house and how big it is and what the land it's sitting on. But then a year down the road, man, I got these cows and they're mooing, and I got these chickens and they're this farmer. And I was like, you know what? You did it to yourself. You didn't think outside of the box. You were in your own little world.
Yeah.
And that's shame on you for just thinking inside your world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, inside, and that's okay to a certain extent. But when you start complaining about it,
yeah. And that, like, my wife and I, we live in an old 1964 home.
Nice.
And it's, well, first of all, homes were built solid back then, but we've never upgraded yet because we had so many kids. Instead of having a bigger house payment, we took that money so that we could afford to do stuff with the kids.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I have a lot of friends that are younger than me or whatever, and they have we're building, we're newlyweds, we're building a new house. And like, yeah, but they can be drowning in a $2,000 house payment. Mine's like $900 a month, So I take that $1,100, I can put shoes on my kids' feet or whatever, or travel a little bit more. So yeah, it's a give and take, and sure, a nice brand new house would be nice, but that's the offset we give, So
yeah.
And it's fine if you want. I'm not going to judge you for living in a big nice house because I just hope you invite me over for Super Bowl because I have somewhere cool to watch Super Bowl.
That's awesome. Any regrets in life so far?
Man, well, no, not really, because I look at everything in life as a learning experience.
Love it.
And I've thought about that many times because I grew up in California, right by the ocean, beautiful weather. So part of me every now and then is, what if I had never gone in the military?
Right.
What if I'd stayed back in California? What would my life? I could be living in the wine country. But now I look at the wine country, I'm like, man, I wouldn't know if I want to live there. Maybe I couldn't afford to get out now,
Yeah.
And then I just have to figure I kind of believe in a higher power that our path is kind of, I was meant to go in the military and meet my wife. That's what was meant to be.
Right.
What if I stayed in California? What if I got paralyzed in a car wreck or something and I couldn't do anything? Million, I don't know. So, so for the most part, no, I'm happy. I mean, my wife and I are great, get along, and we love going out and traveling together. And the kids, and even the 6 kids, they've all had their little differences here and there.
Sure.
Our oldest, she battles addiction. She's been to rehab 3 times.
Is this one in Florida?
Yeah, the one that she's back home now with us. But that's how I ended up here, is because I bought tickets to go see her in Florida, and then she came home. But and that took some years off my wife's life. It got down to the point where she was so skinny. She was so. We probably a couple more months, she probably wouldn't have made it. I think she'd be dead, kind of thing. She was using drugs, and finally got her to go back to rehab. But I remember staying up. I was up for like 40-something hours, trying to find a place to get her and make sure she wasn't going to do anything or run off. And finally got her dropped off at the airport on a plane. I went home and just that was and on top of being up for 40-something hours straight, emotional toll. I mean, that's your daughter, and but she got the help. She's on the straight and narrow now. She's doing really good.
That's great.
And that's when you get into life, you'll find, and people are gonna maybe judge you. Well, why is your kid like that? Even family members. Family members are horrible.
Yeah.
Well, what'd you do wrong as a parent? Why'd your kid end up hooked on drugs? And that's come back actually to the whole mental health thing. First time she went to rehab, they were just teaching her about how to live. And that time, that was just prescription drugs and alcohol. When she came back, it fell even further, and that's when she got into harder stuff. But it took the 3rd visit before we found a facility that said, why is she doing this? Well, it turns out, she had a little bit of bipolar, and it was mostly mental health driven. The drugs were just a way to feel good, to get through the day.
Oh, man. Wow.
So they fixed this up here, and then she didn't need the drugs. So that was a big learning experience. And now I try to teach people, if you have someone that's on addiction, make sure the treatment facility is getting to the root of why they're using.
That's powerful.
Because no one really goes out and just, I want to do drugs just to do drugs. There's usually, a reason why.
Something leads to it.
Something other than a recreational user, that's totally different. But someone that's using that alcohol or drugs to get through the day to carry on life, we got to fix something else. Coming back to that whole seed of the fire, root of the problem.
Yep.
What's really, we're just going to teach you how not to use drugs.
Yeah.
Well, let's figure out one step lower. Why are we using them?
Yeah.
And so we've dealt with that, and our other daughters, and it just teaches you life is definitely not going to be perfect. There are ups and downs, whether it's marriage, family, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you first start having kids, you think, that's why it cracks me up, because we'll see a lot of parents, young kids, my kids would never do that.
Yeah.
I'll never allow them to do that.
Yeah.
But I'll come find me in a few years when your kid's 16 years old and doesn't show up back home and you're looking for them. And we have devices. We can track our kids on their phones with this Life 360 app.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, them kids are smart enough, they turn it off. They disable it, you can't find them. So, but the one positive thing we learned about social media and kids, one day our daughter was missing. This was our 23-year-old. She was in high school. She was that kid that you called, always answered. Where you at? I'm at the mall, I'm at my friends, whatever. One day she wasn't answering her phone. Okay, big red flag, because she always answers it. My wife tries for a couple hours, can't get a hold of her. So my wife gets on Facebook, finds one of her friends. Can you find out where our daughter is, because she's not answering her phone, we're worried about her. Yep, no problem. The story, I can't even follow the story, because it goes like, this friend got on Snapchat, who knew this friend who had Twitter, who got on this friend who knew Facebook. I mean, it went around this thing till they finally pinpointed her at her boyfriend's house. She was where she was supposed to be. Long story short is the phone had malfunctioned and wouldn't charge.
I got you.
And it died. And she didn't think of anything to call us, let us know my phone's dead. She was where she was supposed to be. And so she calls us from the boyfriend's phone, and within 20 minutes, what's going on? We're just worried about it. She told us about the phone. So she wasn't doing anything wrong, wasn't hiding anything. But the power of her friends using social media to track down, she's friends with so-and-so who's friends with so-and-so, and they were able to, it was, so that's one thing I always, people are, I want my kids using social media. Like, well, that was one time where I'm glad these kids had it. Yeah. Because we tracked her down, and so I know one of those, there's a silver lining in everything.
Yeah, that's true. What are the numbers 315?
So that was my badge number in the fire department. Was badge 315. Yeah. So that was so when I retired, that was kind of the number I kept, and so just significance.
Yeah. He's tattooed on your hand.
Yeah. So I got a Maltese cross there with the 315 on there.
That's awesome. And it's on the thingy, the little plaque you made us.
Yeah.
It says hashtag undefeated, and on the back of it has
I got lots of little stickers to put on there with the website on it, and
that's awesome.
My badge on there and stuff. So
I love it.
Kind of I went to my 4-year degree is in marketing, so I kind of learned about branding yourself kind of deal. And
I need your help.
Yeah, I can try. And I just learned from watching other people, listening to other people talk about building their social media influence up, and the last thing is I got a degree in computers, I got a degree in marketing, and the biggest thing is when you're building a brand, make the website something people can remember. You don't want a very long, complicated name that people can misspell. Right. Make it something easy, because if I'm just passing, hey, what's your website? Let's blah, blah, blah. All right, I can remember that before I get home. If it's something complicated, so we learned about when the internet was becoming alive, a lot of people were going out and buying, if I was just Henry.com, people would go buy different variations of how to spell Henry, and then I'd want to buy those up, and I have to buy it from the people who got smart. They knew Walmart.com. They knew different how people are going to spell Walmart wrong. They'll spell the E, the A, or whatever, 2 T's, 2 L's. So people are buying up all the domain names, right, and then making these corporations pay big money for it. So,
how do you want to be remembered?
The biggest thing, if I was to pass away and there's a funeral tomorrow, I want people to repeat something I said that made them laugh, that made them feel happy. I don't want people to sit around crying, blah, blah. I would rather people at the funeral all tell jokes about, man, remember the time he said this, remember the time he said that. Something that just, I made you feel good, I made you feel laugh, I made you feel happy, or I helped you out, that's how I want to be remembered.
Yeah.
So.
This isn't going to happen, but I will say that when you DM'd me and got my cell number, and you said you had tickets and you have a few days, you're going to fly to Oklahoma City, and you're going to see me and Parker, felt honored. That was like, oh, he wants to meet us.
See, I feel the opposite way. Where, I was happy you were willing to have me. I mean, you brought me into your home, you fed me, and Parker made the trip over here, so. I look at it the opposite, where I feel thankful that you guys took time out of your day. I mean, everyone's busy, everyone's got stuff going on, and you made time to, be here and having a shirt and the coffee mugs, and I'm the opposite. I feel very honored that you allow me to be part of your experience, and that we can continue to work together and spread 100%. The good word. And
for sure. Well, on Twitter at Hank Wade. No, wait, it's at it's Twitter, Hank Wade at Henry with a bunch of numbers.
Henry 68157, which is my zip code.
Okay.
So if that's the best way to find it, it's Henry 68157. It does say Hank Wade as the name, but you can change the name to whatever you want. And then Twitter, and then I do Instagram, and I think that one. Henry, I think that one is Hank Wade on Instagram.
Yeah, I think it is too.
And I have it locked. Anyone can request to be my friend. That doesn't bother me. I just usually go, because you get so many like robots trying to, if you have it wide open, all of a sudden you get all these spam messages. So I just kind of filter out like, oh, that's spam. But anyone true that's a real person, I don't mind. I'm not trying to hide anything. So and then I have a website called hankwade.com. And on that website, I just have blog postings. And there is a resource page on there I made with tons of links for veterans, for firefighters, for anyone that needs to find help about mental health. You can go on there and look up phone numbers, websites. So I put that on there because if you don't want anyone to know, you want to just kind of secretly go look, you need to know who to call. And you don't, maybe someone doesn't want to ask me, who can I call? Go to that website and look it up, and no one has to know, kind of thing. So, and I got my Master's of Beef Advocacy through the Beef Checkoff program. So I learned about beef so I can speak intelligently about beef. And there's so much I don't know, but I have so many friends now I can ask. I belong to a couple Facebook groups. Hey, this guy asked me this, what is this? And what does that mean? And most farmers and beef people, they're so willing to tell you because, hey, the more we get the truth out there, the more we squash the bad information. So that's exactly right. That's how I feel too. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And kind of, there really is no dumb question. Because there's a lot of things I didn't know, and I've learned that. Although one thing I am very disappointed about is no one's come out with peach flavored milk yet. Of the few. You have strawberry milk, right? Yeah, I'm not a fan of flavored milk. I'll just drink milk straight up. Yeah, see, if you have peaches and ice cream, how good that tastes. Why can't they have peach milk? No one's taken up the idea yet, though. So you should try it. Maybe that's my next goal is to go to dairy farm and make peach milk or something. Oh, the Twitter world's all yours. I'll tell the wife I got home and bought a cow. Yeah, it would be awesome to get the reaction. Yeah, next week we're dropping off a cow. We're going to start milking that thing for her to work. 2021. Look at the camera. Do you approve this podcast, sir? I approve it. It's undefeated. My name is Wong Lam, and I definitely approve this podcast. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. So, yeah.